In this recording, I'm going to go over how to do sections of Chapter 6, Section 1, 2, and 3 from Algebra 1 Survey. Here's some terms and some signs that you need to know. They're very important. The first one is less than. Less than is pointing to the left, so you can think left and less. They both start with L. And if you have a graph of less than, you would be using an open circle. See the open circle, and the arrow would also point to the left. For less than or equal to, sorry, I gotta go in order here. It still points to the left, but it also has a line underneath it. That includes the equal to part. And the graph of it looks exactly the same, except that you would have a closed circle, a solid dot there, and it would still point to the left. For greater than, your arrow will point to the right, and you will use an open circle and an arrow pointing to the right. And for greater than or equal to, same thing, pointing to the right, line underneath it, and the graph will have a solid dot pointing to the right. Sometimes you will be asked to look at a graph and then, or sometimes you will be asked to look at an inequality expression, like x is less than or equal to 3, and to graph that. So here's how you would do that. Step 1 is to draw a circle on the number. So here's your circle on the number. Step 2 is decide whether to fill that in and make it a solid dot, or whether to leave it open. So again, if it is less than or greater than, well, this one says if greater than or less than, leave it empty, so leave it open. But we have, in this one, we have less than or equal to, and that is right there, and then we want to fill it in. So you take your circle and you fill it in, and then you have to decide which way you want your arrow to point. Well, remember on this page that we have this symbol right here, less than or greater, so we should point it to the left. Oops, sorry. So we want to just start at that circle and draw a line to the left. Now we can draw these in Sketchpad fairly easily. So if you don't have access to a scanner, you can do these in Sketchpad. So here is the Sketchpad worksheet. Make it a little bigger here. Okay, I'm having trouble making it bigger, but it's there. It's big enough. All right, so it says x is greater than or equal to 4. So we want to put a point at 4. So I'm going over here to 4 and I'm putting a point. And then you say to yourself, do I want that to be a solid dot or an open circle? It should be a solid dot because it's greater than or equal to. And now I'm going to make an arrow. So I'm going to hold down the segment thing until I get the arrow key, the ray with an arrow at one end. I pick that. And every number greater than 4 would be like 5, 6, 7. So I want to include all the numbers that are greater than 4. So I draw my arrow so that I would include all the numbers greater than 4. Okay, number 2 says x is less than or equal to negative 4. So I first find negative 4 on the number line right there. Put a point and then include my arrow. This time I want all the numbers less than or equal to negative 4. So think of a number that is less than negative 4. Well, negative 5 is less than negative 4 because it's farther to the left of it. So I'll make my arrow going that way. Now you can make your arrows darker. These are really skinny arrows. So I'm going to do a thick arrow, go to display, and then choose line width, and then choose thick if you want to change it. You can change the color too if you want from the display menu. If you do something on Sketchpad like I just did and make a mistake, you can highlight it and then just hit delete. And I can use my arrow tool to highlight these random points that are there by mistake, and I can delete them. So then the next one, I'm not going to do all of these, but the next one says x is greater than negative 1. Well, greater than, I don't want a solid dot. And there's no way to make my dot be open. I mean, you can look in the display thing, but there's only options for lines, not for circles. So I'm going to make a circle instead. So I get the circle tool, and I'm going to make a circle at -1. So it's okay if it's, you know, not perfect. That's about at -1. And now I'll get the line, and I want all the numbers bigger than -1. Well, 5 is bigger than 1, so I want to make sure my arrow goes this way. That time I put the arrow just a little bit above the line so it's easier to see. I see that my line up here at greater than or equal to 4, I can't even see it, so I should probably make that one thicker too. Okay, so that's what you're going to do for all these. As long as the x is on the left side, you can just point the arrow the same direction as the line. But like in number 5 says 1/3 is less than x. You may want to rewrite it. You could do that. You could say, well, that means that x is actually greater than 1/3. Oops. So I could graph that, but you have to make sure that if I want 1/3 to be less than x, then x, that number that I include the lines on, has to be bigger than 1/3. So if I put a point at 1/3, which would be around there, I need to make my arrow going so that all the numbers bigger than 1/3 would be included in that, which would be that way. Oh, and I accidentally put a point instead of an open circle, so I'm just going to put a circle on top of it. It's a pretty big circle, but that's okay. We get the idea. So again, these don't have to be perfect. It's just a way for you to turn in your work. If you want, you could instead make a copy of this or write the problems on your own paper and then draw your own number lines. That would be an option. Sometimes you have to simplify first, like in this one here. We have to figure out what is 2 plus 3 squared. Well, 3 squared is 9, 2 plus 9 is 11. So I'd really be graphing x is greater than 11. So I'd have to go all the way over here until I get to the 11, which is right here. And number 8 you have to simplify as well. And that's all there is. Okay, so on the other part of the assignment for section 1, there is somewhere you have to write the inequality shown by the graph. So if you're, let's look up here at this top part first, where the steps are. Step 1 is to look at the graph. They don't even say that, but it is. Step 2 is to write a variable. We usually use x, but you wouldn't have to. And the number indicated by the circle. So the circle is at -4, so we write an x and we write a -4. We don't know what sign to put in the front yet, in between them, I mean. Now we look at the arrow. The arrow is pointing to the right. So right here it says if arrow points right, I'm going to use either greater than or equal. And then step 3 is to look at the circle. If the circle is open or empty, like we have, then I'll use either greater than or less than. If it's filled in, I'll use greater than or less than or equal. So I know that I'm going to use greater than because it's pointing to the right and it's an open circle. So let's do number 10 following these steps. Number 10 says that we have a line right here, and I'm going to first write my arrow. This is number 10. And I'm going to write my variable x, and then I'm going to write the number that has the dot by it, the circle by it, and that's -2. I'm not going to fill in the middle yet. Then I say, okay, is it pointing to the left or the right? Well, it's pointing to the left. That means that I want to use either less than or equal. So less than or equal. And then I look at if it's filled in or open. This one's filled in, the dot. So I include the line underneath. So it's less than, x is less than or equal to -2. Okay, how about number 11? Number 11, we have got to put our variable, got to put our -8.5. This time the arrow is pointing to the right. So I know I'm either going to have greater than or equal to. And then I look and I see that it's an open circle. So I just want greater than then. And then you can finish 12, 13, 14, and 15. So for chapter 3, section 1, you need to finish the problems from Sketchpad that we didn't finish. And you need to finish these ones as well. And there's a few other problems too.